Hello everybody, Silverbusters here coming at you with another video. And what we're looking at today is another big smash in the silver price. And I know for some of you who may have just recently gotten into the silver community in the last year or so, seeing the silver price smack down to a 24 handle might be a little discouraging. But I want to put this in a little perspective for you right away. This is a 3-year chart of silver. So this is 2018, which, wasn't that long ago, right? And silver was sitting at a $14 handle. And here is March 2020. This was the coronavirus down spike price low when you could have spot silver at $12. Realistically, I bought in this time period, and it was still $15 to get your hands on any kind of realistic um, retail product, 1 ounce rounds or something like that. But also, uh, a lot of places were higher than that. A lot of places were charging $5 premiums for 1 ounce rounds. So a lot of places were charging 17 when it was at this low of 24. And then obviously we had the big run up during the money printing and the coronavirus panic, and we had the summer high last year, and we had the spike in February where Wall Street Silver kind of, I don't know if it was Wall Street Silver or Wall Street's Bets at the time, first came on the scene and really ran the price up right towards 30 there. But so yeah, 24, even a 24 handle, 24 and a half, whatever we're at exactly right now. I don't know if it has it up. Yeah, 24.36 is still in this big, choppy, higher level of price that we've been at since the pandemic started. So whether it's at the top of this range or the bottom of this range or the middle of this range, I mean, your downside risk realistically is probably in here where these downside spikes are to a 22 handle. So, you know, if you're in the silver market, you should be in the silver market for the long haul. It's really difficult to flip silver, especially retail products, considering the markups involved that you're going to get from most dealers. If we get on fine bullion prices, uh, it was still $3.30 markup for 1 ounce rounds, maybe a little less than that for 100 ounce bars. But we're in a situation where silver is still highly valued, and the supply isn't exactly, just pouring out of the streams. We're not seeing a return to normal markups on retail silver product at all. So don't let yourself get discouraged. Remember where we have been and where we have gotten now with silver, and look at it as an opportunity to accumulate more. That would be my suggestion. But I would say that a push back down into these regions, the low end of these regions, coinciding with a sort of new scare in the economy, that I would say if there was a theme for the month of August, it would be attempting to scare people into compliance is the conclusion that I'm trying to get to. So what scares people? Well, what scares people, specifically people who aren't already, super compliant, obedient. Yes, sir, boss. I'll buy some 10-year treasuries with a negative yield, boss. Kind of people already, right? Who are the people that are hesitant or on the fence, and might be scared off of that fence? What would scare them, right? So one of those things would be lower gold and silver prices, right? Because if somehow they can get lower silver and gold prices down, that maybe get some people that aren't really well read into this situation to question their thesis, right? To think maybe the Fed and the U.S. government just printing trillions and trillions of dollars every year and spending it on ever increasing tax credits and infrastructure projects and port programs and handouts to everybody, that sort of thing can continue long term. That they don't have the historical basis to see that this is just another empire in its dying phases, and is going through the excesses that we typically see during those kind of periods of time and have to do something to protect themselves. Well, if you don't have that basis, maybe you can be scared out of your position. And we know that gold and silver can be manipulated down for periods of time just through manipulation of the paper market. There always comes a time when there's a call on the physical, but in the short term, they have no problem manipulating the prices. If they want to engineer a down spike, remember, these are people that are connected to groups that essentially have infinite money. They're not really concerned about losing money in the market. They're literally playing both sides of the market. If you're the Federal Reserve and the United States government, and you have a vested interest in seeing the gold and silver price suppressed, and you have this massive paper market where nothing really matters, and you have infinite money because of your control of the central bank, and all the large member banks, are in cahoots. Well, you can just go, okay, hedge fund A over there, we're gonna need you to play the silver long, and we'll need you to get crushed by the bullion banks, and we'll just reimburse you with printed money on the other side. Sound good? Yeah, sounds good. That's the kind of, and the paper market is orders of magnitude larger than the physical market. So that kind of backroom dealing, backroom trading, fake kind of operations, it's obvious that that sort of thing is taking place, because in a normal environment, we would see gold and silver revalue much higher in a situation where we've seen as much money printing as we have. So just keep that in mind. Don't lose heart just because we're at a 24 handle. Even if we are threatening these 22 handles, you're still in this higher trading range that we've set since the pandemic, and I wouldn't really worry about it. But they're going to attempt to scare you on multiple fronts. So what are the other fronts that they're going to attempt to scare you with? Well, good old pandemic is back, right? With all the new variants we're seeing released. And they want to scare you into accepting another round of lockdowns. And they know they've already got half the country. They know they've got the West Coast. They know they've got the Northeast. And they want to spread that into further areas, and they're getting a lot of resistance. I think they know they're not going to be able to come over the top that they came last time and actually get governors in certain parts of the country to approve lockdowns, because they didn't help much, and they didn't prevent the spread of the virus. So between those two things, we've got certain states in the United States that are ideologically opposed to relocking down for whatever reason, because one, the lockdowns didn't work, and two, we don't even really feel like it's justified in many cases, given the other ways the risk can be managed. But remember, this is the month of fear is the theme here. They want to scare anybody who can be scared out of their positions and into compliance to do so. So what do? They come up with variants, right? And this is kind of a desperate move, because I don't know if you guys saw the CNBC article. Let me pull it up real quick. We'll go CNBC. Here we go. I searched for it previously. 74% Massachusetts. This was an article that was on CNBC that said 74% of infected people in Massachusetts, a COVID outbreak, were fully vaccinated. So ratcheting up the fear here about the variants is going to have... There's not going to be a logical chain that you can follow here, because on one point they're going to be saying, oh yeah, go get a shot. And then on the second side, they're going to say, oh, we'll be worried about these variants. And apparently the vaccine isn't doing anything, because 74% of people infected in Massachusetts outbreak were fully vaccinated. Well, if you can still get COVID, and you can still die from COVID, and you can still pass on COVID, no, I would recommend going to Chris Martinson's work to try to see the details on this and about the effectiveness or lack of effectiveness of the vaccine and the questionable data on that in terms of the data pool that they pulled from the people they put in their pools, it just doesn't look like the vaccines are doing much. So you're accepting the risk of a rushed out experimental product, and then you still get headlines from this from mainstream media, right? You don't get any more mainstream than CNBC. This is, where the dogs go to get their tails wagged. And and then 3/4 of people infected in Massachusetts outbreak were fully vaccinated against the coronavirus, with 4 of them ending up in the hospital. And this was a group, I don't know if we go down here, it was a group of like 400 or people or so, right? And I had this argument with somebody online already about this data. So, that slashes both ways, because they want everybody to get vaccinated, but they also want everybody to be scared about these new variants. But when we get back in here about the variants, they're talking about it, and there is this fear porn or legitimate concern. So they want you to be afraid, right, about how deadly new strains could be. And there's evidence that it's more infectious. We're talking about like Delta virus, but is it more severe? Well, we only had 4 people in the hospital over here out of the set of 400 or so, 469 cases, right? And 4 of those, 74% of those were vaccinated, and then 4% of those 4 of those ended up in the hospital, right? So that's, I had the argument. It was something like that's less than 1% ended up in the hospital, which is, really low, right? I don't have the numbers in front of me before, but there are people saying the death rate of the old COVID was higher than that. Now, mainly it was old people dying, and maybe the people that were most susceptible have already gotten it, but you can see how these numbers don't exactly support each other, right? If you go in here, it says becoming more transmissible and less lethal is absolutely what is best for the pathogen. You have to remember that these are attempts at evolution, at spreading further and wider. It wants to become the common cold. The common cold lives forever because it doesn't kill its host, right? It just spreads from one person to the next person, slightly adapting on the next way. And because it's not wiping out what is effectively its home in other people, right? In people, that's why the common cold continues to exist. That's the pathway that it gets to produce as a living being, right? That's the pathway that's best for the coronavirus. It's ironic, but that's the truth, right? The best path is not to kill hosts. Now, it can happen. There's over here examples, like especially when it crosses species, you're operating on different biologies, and then you kill more of your hosts, but it's just like a fire that burns itself out if it kills its hosts, right? So that's the situation a virus wants to avoid, but they're going to try to scare you and get a second round of lockdowns through this. And they're not going to just use the states to order lockdowns this time. They're going to try to use other methods. Case in point, I got another bad Friday night call. This is, I don't know if it's 2 weeks in a row. I think it's 2 weeks in a row I've gotten bad Friday night calls. Note, historical point, if you are a business that wants to report bad information that's happened to your business, usually you do it at like 5 p.m. on a Friday night and hope nobody's noticing, right? But the last couple times, last 2 weeks, I've gotten bad Friday night calls. Now, one is just kind of personal, but the other was for work. And guess what they said? Oh, you were in contact with somebody that was confirmed to have COVID. You have to be off of work for 10 days or get a test. And of course, I go online and try to schedule a test, and it's Friday night, and the earliest available slots for testing is Sunday afternoon, right? So I'm on ice through my employer, okay? And my employer is thinking, oh, and my employer is a nationwide employer. And so they're getting their marching orders from some completely other part of the country. So it's basically a stealth lockdown, a stealth, of course I could go out and get tickets to the baseball game and they wouldn't be able to stop me, but they are interfering with the economy because very likely there are businesses that are not open today that at least on a short-term basis are going to be closed because they've sidelined all the healthy employees waiting for these tests to be put in. And so what if you're one of these hundreds of customers to these stores that are going to be closed this weekend because of this coronavirus policy that's being pushed by, imagine the kind of people in your HR department, right? Those sort of people who like to are natural, like they're not they don't question authority. They don't try to actually see what's best in a situation. They just follow what's written on a sheet of paper. They're not very adaptive to different situations, and they just they are very much leaning politically in such a way that they would support the current administration, even to the point of lying for them. I'm the higher echelons will lie for them. The lower echelons are just part of this weird cultish religion where they think they're doing a good thing. They think they're pushing public health by shutting down the economy. And what they don't realize is that shutting down the economy is a very short path to economic destruction, because we saw it last time. We saw it with the last cycle where economies were shut down, businesses were shut down, people were put out of work, money was printed, but the amount of actual goods and services in the economy declined because of these policies. And it led to actually far more disruption to our lives than I'm going to be harsh here, than having your 85-year-old grandma in the nursing home who already has 6 comorbidities or more. Check Chris Martinson's videos about who actually dies from COVID. It's really old people who have lots of health problems already, and then they catch the cold and then they die, okay? And it's not necessarily the cold that killed them. It's just that they were super weak to begin with, that they couldn't handle the cold, okay? So yeah, that sounds harsh, but sidelining all of your 20, 30, 40, and 50-year-olds and keeping them from producing and running society, because let's face it, they're the ones that run society for everything else. They pick up your trash, they cook your meals, they guard you while you sleep, okay? Sidelining those people to try to save 85-year-olds in the nursing home already is not productive for society. Yes, we should honor our elders, and yes, they should do what they can to protect themselves. But if they're already got a foot in the grave, we got to be realistic about what can be done to protect those people. We are not immortal, and I guess people are just really bad about dealing with their own mortality. But you're never going to be able to select the correct path unless you can be rational about risks. And in this case, I have to say we're not being rational about risks. I'm far more likely to die on my commute to work than I am to die from coronavirus by running into anybody with the coronavirus at work. And that's part of this second round of scare tactics, and I think it's related. I think a spike down in the silver price and another round of lockdowns and another round of, I would call these stealth lockdowns, where organizations are infiltrated and, have politically motivated people following these essential, kind of outrageous essentially stealth lockdowns, because businesses are going to be closed today. And it's not because my local authority has ordered a lockdown. It's because somebody in a HR department somewhere decided that this should be shut down. Anyway, that's what I've got for you this week, folks. Don't get chased out of your silver position. If anything, if you've got money that you don't need for your emergency funds, might be a good time to load up on it. I did make a purchase recently that I'm still waiting to come in, and you know, it wasn't with this most recent downslide. It was, when was it? It was probably earlier in the week when we were at a 25 handle, and I'm really not sweating it at all, to be perfectly honest. It was one of those bonuses that you get from these stupid corporations that want you to force you to have all this money on a card, and it's like, of course, I have to eat another 3 or 4% of credit card fees just to make my investment, right? You know, they can't just give me cash. No, they have to let a bunch of middlemen take a cut in between, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, I'm really not sweating it at 24, and it could go down to 22 in this part. The pattern doesn't really change here on the chart. You know, let me know if you see anything differently. This is Silverbuster signing out. Hope you're having a better weekend than I am. See you next time.